This is important.
It's extremely important. Does it say it's recording for you?
Okay.
Yeah, right?
Yes, it says
Okay, good.
recording.
I'm not text. I think that I did it right. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about this. Clearly, you know that
Yeah.
I'm like psycho, especially when it comes to like foods and recipes and all that kind of stuff. And you are my right hand gal, literally anything like in
Psycho is the right
regards,
word.
yeah, psycho 100%. But anything like in regards to like health and wellness, you were literally the first person that I call. And also, you're helping me with my own gut health journey, which we have to set up another call to go through all of that. Um, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think honestly, like just so because again, posting this video, I'm going to be posting in on like in the community that I felt also. So I want people to know a little bit more about like who are you and like what exactly do you even do before we even like get into like the topic of like anti-inflammatory diets and how it's so important
Okay.
specifically for gut health. So who are you?
Okay. So I'm just a regular kid on the block. Um, but I myself went through my own gut health journey. I was diagnosed at 22 with ulcerative colitis. Doctors didn't know what the hell was going on with me. I had lost like 20 pounds in a week, was hospitalized. It was hectic. Colonoscopies, ultrasounds, all of the tests. In the end, it came back ulcerative colitis, which I know a lot of people are dealing with. And actually, before being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, I had a lot of IBS symptoms that were just unexplained. And I couldn't figure it out. Like I would eat, and then 30 minutes later, I'd be like, my stomach is just not happy. And there was no definite symptom. It wasn't like I was like nauseous. It wasn't like I was running to the washroom. It was just like a general discomfort. Something's not right. And I could feel
Yeah.
it. And every time I would have something, anything, I would eat anything, this would happen. And then, years had gone by. I tried gluten-free diets. I tried all of these different forms of, eating, removing foods, adding foods, all of these things until eventually I was diagnosed. And when I got diagnosed, I realized that the doctors weren't very helpful. And I actually started to realize maybe my particular GI and maybe other GIs are different, but my particular GI just didn't really care to help me heal.
Yeah.
He was just kind of trying to get me to like take my anti-inflammatory drugs. And then when those didn't work, he was giving me more drugs. And thinking back, very luckily, the drugs didn't work on me. I was having like crazy symptoms, the ones that you would get like maybe only 1 or 2% of the population. Like I think I was having like night sweats every night when I was taking those pills. Severe night sweats. It was like I
Yeah.
was like menopausal. I had heart racing to the point where I thought I was having a heart attack. Like I was like, I need to go to the hospital. Like it
Oh my
was
gosh.
really, really scary symptoms. And I think I had only taken these drugs for about maybe 2 weeks, but it was probably the worst 2 weeks of my life. Like worse than having ulcerative colitis, which sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. I
And
remember
so
when that
in the end,
happened, like when that started for you.
yeah. And actually, in the end, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try a more holistic approach, something more natural. And it took me a long time to find the right person for me. But oh my God, like 3 weeks later, I was back at work and I was like suffering for 6 months. Couldn't get out
Yeah.
of my bed, in depression for 6 months. I remember one of my friends coming to my room and saying, enough's enough, literally grabbed me by my feet and was like, you need to go outside
Yeah.
because I just hadn't been outside. I was too scared to leave. And it was like such a hard time in my life. Ugh, like I hate even thinking about it because I like know other people are going through this and it just like is miserable. But finding a natural way, I mean, I wasn't fully healed. I still had symptoms, but to go from bedridden to back at work and back at school in 3 weeks, I think that's pretty incredible. Drugs
That's
can't do that to you.
insane.
And
No,
to
one
like feel better while you're doing it. So then, eventually I kind of like stepped away from the natural and started noticing I was getting more panic attacks, more, wasn't really in alignment with who I am and what I love to do and how I love to do things. And it was really showing up in my body in different ways: panic attacks, sweats, overthinking, lots of stress, and then stress symptoms, rashes, tons of things. So eventually I went back into this natural way, went back to school, and here we are. Registered
that's
holistic nutritionist, here to help
that
you with your IBS symptoms.
you're so funny, and that's crazy too. And I can only imagine like how much havoc you actually wreaked on like your actual gut from like taking medication. And it's not, I don't think it's just medications,
Oh,
also your mental health too, because I mean, from my research, again, I'm no holistic nutritionist, but from my own research, just
mm-hmm.
having those thoughts, like just being in a really bad negative headspace can play such a crazy
Yeah,
role on your gut. And I'm sure also for you to, when you were
yeah,
healing your IBS and whatnot, obviously diet came hand in hand too, I'm assuming, right? So whether it's with supplements or if it's switching up
yeah,
your diet to more of an anti-inflammatory diet. So we'll dive right into what
yeah.
is an anti-inflammatory diet? Why is it important to even consider an anti-inflammatory diet?
Okay.
We'll start with
First
what
thing,
is it?
I actually don't like calling an anti-inflammatory diet a diet.
Okay.
It's a lifestyle.
Mm,
Diets are like your keto diet. You're manipulating food to get a particular outcome. And yes, in a sense, you're doing that with anti inflammatory. But I think the main difference is an anti inflammatory diet is how we are supposed to eat naturally. So you're removing a lot of foods that were just never available to us and adding a lot of foods that should be there naturally. And you're just looking at more of a whole foods lifestyle. It doesn't mean that you can't have the foods that are inflammatory. You just want to reduce the amount of consumption that you have of those foods.
yeah.
And diets, I find like when you're yo-yo dieting, like going from keto to like a paleo, back to keto, back to, whatever, Atkins, and all of this, like jumping back and forth, actually creates metabolic stress
Mm,
and damages your cellular design. So I don't love the word diet because diet implies that you're doing it for 6 months.
mm,
An anti-inflammatory diet you're doing as a lifestyle. This should be a forever diet. And
100%.
if you do it forever, you'll actually notice that you're feeling like 1,000% better. Like 1,000%. It's not it's not a little bit. It's not a small difference. It's a big difference in how you're feeling and how your just frequency is so much higher by eating just good food. That's it.
Absolutely.
You know.
What about some common, like what are some common inflammatory foods that people should avoid? Because I think, I mean, just when people hear like anti-inflammatory or inflammatory foods, like I'm sure you know, like you see it everywhere, especially on social media, everyone's talking about it, but what are those common inflammatory
Mm-hmm.
foods that like no-no, that are no-nos you should not be eating?
So that's a great question. Anti-inflammatory foods, just kind of in a bulk, are everything that you would find generally in the middle aisles of a grocery store
Got it. Yeah.
for the most part. It's your processed foods, it's your ultra processed foods, it's your refined sugars, it's your trans fats. We don't want to eat margarine, eat butter.
Mm,
Butter is so good for you. We
yeah.
don't want margarine. Margarines are so bad. Trans fats, so bad. Processed foods, so anything that is essentially packaged, right? You want to go for greens, not something in a box. If
Yeah.
it's in a box, it's been processed. Now that could include flour as well.
Mm,
So if you're baking, maybe you don't necessarily want to purchase a processed flour as well. Maybe you want to get something that's less refined, less processed. So like your einkorn,
mm,
ancient grains. Those are going to be a little bit pricier, but they are going to be so much better for your gut health
yeah.
and so much less inflammatory, right? Sugar. Sugar is like easily the worst thing that you could put into your body. And I'm not talking sugar from fruits. I'm talking sugar that has been manipulated into our processed foods.
Yeah.
So sugar has something, I think it's like 200 different names now for sugar. And they hide it in so many different ways. And so if you see like natural flavors on a box, just don't buy it. That is 100% inflammatory. You will not feel good long term on that.
Wow.
If it says corn syrup, maltodextrin, if it says like agave syrup, even like they do it in such ways that are very tricky. They make it sound like it's healthier, the healthier
Yeah.
option. It's not.
It's that's actually funny that you mentioned agave syrup because from my knowledge, I thought agave syrup was actually like a better alternative than like your traditional, like just regular white sugar. Really? Oh my God. Do you
Yeah,
see? Like there's so much misinformation
yeah. And actually,
online
it's
that like for
funny.
me, it's extremely overwhelming. It's you don't even
Mm-hmm.
know where to start, what to add, what to eliminate because you're just like
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people also come to me saying like, "Oh, well, I use brown sugar in
yeah.
my cooking." Brown sugar is actually just white sugar with molasses in it.
Is that what it is?
So it's not healthier.
Yeah.
It could actually be worse
Mm,
depending on how much you're using. The point of the brown sugar is it creates a different type of sweetness when you're cooking with it because it contains molasses in it. So in terms of baking needs, it might be it might create a different flavor profile. But in terms of health, it's literally white sugar coated
yeah.
with more sugar. It's not good for you. So, like a lot of people choose to bake with brown sugar or maple syrup. Maple syrup, if you're getting a natural one, great.
That's what I use.
If you're
Okay.
getting something maple syrup flavored, put it
Yeah.
down. You don't want it. You know,
I think
if
it's
you're
so
using
crazy.
honey,
Sorry.
you want raw honey.
Okay.
You don't want something that's pasteurized, right? Anything that's been processed, you want to use as little as possible.
Mm. I
Yeah.
was gonna say though, with like the flavorings, when you're saying like natural flavors or stuff like that, it's funny because I feel like with a lot of those like beverages and stuff like that, it'll say natural flavors, but then the actual like let's say if it's I don't know, maybe like a soda or like a drink, one of those like flavored drinks and stuff like that. It'll say like no sugar, like zero sugar added, but then there's added flavors. So like, is it like contradicting? Like like,
Oh my God. Usually the added flavors are worse for you than sugar.
but it
So
says zero sugar. So when you're buying it, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a beverage that has zero sugar. So it's ultimately going to be better for me. But then it has natural
wrong.
flavors in it.
Big X on that one.
Oh my
Big
gosh.
X.
So they're
Big X on
lying.
that. They're lying. So a lot of the time, I actually see this with some clients. I have a lot of people who come to me who struggle with um, soda addictions, diet soda or regular soda. And so a lot of the time they say, well, I'm just drinking diet soda, so it's no sugar, or I'm drinking Coke Zero, so it's no sugar.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what they have to put in to make it taste good? Because that stuff is not good for you. And it's going to stay in your body longer than sugar. And it's, oh my God, going to create so many problems. Like aspartame, I think is number one ingredient in diet sodas. It's, oh my God, so bad for you. Like you might as well just drink the sugar. Like you might as well drink sugar in replacement of aspartame. It's so bad for you, and people are consuming it because they think it's the healthier alternative. It's not. The healthier alternative is actually just to stay away from these items altogether, because I feel people don't realize, like, there are scientists who are specifically working towards making these foods addictive to you. So whether they add sugar or not, it doesn't matter, because they're putting a bunch of chemicals in there and they are purposely making it taste the way that you would want it to taste
Oh my gosh.
with chemicals. And actually, I was just doing a little bit of research on natural flavoring recently, and natural flavoring can have anything, including plastics in it.
They probably just legally don't need to state that.
Mm-hmm. Once it's a small enough amount per serving size, they
Yeah.
actually don't need to put it on the label at all.
Wow.
So here's the kind of tricky part. It could say zero trans fats, for example, on your label.
Yeah.
On your ingredients list, it could say hydrogenated, anything hydrogenated oil. And hydrogenated means it's trans fat. But on your list where it says zero trans fat, so you actually can have trans fats even though they're labeling it zero trans fats, but it's because of the serving size. Who determines the serving size? The company. So they can make the serving size as small as they want.
I'm
A really
literally
great
gonna go through my
example.
pantry and
Oh, it's
look
the
at
worst.
everything.
A great example of this actually is your mac and cheese box.
Mm,
It says 4 servings per box. Tell me anyone that eats a quarter of that box
yeah.
in one sitting. Tell me anyone. It's
And the
literally
whole
not going
box
to
is in one
happen.
serving. It's not big. Yeah.
Right. It just, that serving size doesn't make sense. It's,
Yeah.
you're eating the whole
The whole
thing,
box.
right? The whole box. You're eating 4 servings,
Yeah.
but that's not a realistic serving portion. That's what that company has decided is the serving size so that they can label or not label certain ingredients.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's how they get you. So, for example, Coke, if you look at the ingredients on a Coke can, it looks like there's nothing in it.
Oh, you're just frozen. Hold on, Sim. Hold on. Um,
If you look,
sorry, Sim, you're just frozen.
hotspot too.
Hold on. You're still frozen. Okay, you're good now.
Hold on a second. I'm gonna hotspot.
I think you're good.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah.
you
Okay.
perfectly now. Sorry, you were saying about the cans, like on the
Okay.
label.
So yeah, the label I was actually looking just out of curiosity. I was looking at a Coke can label, and it says like 4 ingredients or 5 ingredients on there, and one of the last ones is sugar, which generally, if you're buying a packaged item, you want that to be the last item. But you can like Google that they have like tons of different chemicals inside of Coke. Why are none of them labeled? Because they've made the serving size small enough that they don't have to legally label any of those things.
That's insane. So you actually have no, you think that these are the ingredients that you're actually consuming, yet they're not. There's actually significantly more based on the actual
Exactly.
serving size, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So some companies are very transparent because they believe in this cause and
Mm,
they believe in complete transparency, but you really have to find those companies. The easiest way, I would say, is just to avoid processed altogether. Go for your
100%.
Whole Foods. Go for your natural foods. Go for foods that are grown in the ground on trees, in bushes. Things like that are going to just be generally healthier for you. That said, some of our healthy foods can create inflammation as well, but not in the sense of they are creating inflammation. It's your body is reacting to them as if they are inflammatory. So they're likely you have a gut integrity issue. Your gut lining has been damaged in some way. And so certain foods, when you have a damaged gut lining, you usually have digestive issues as well. So for example, your stomach acid levels are not high enough to be able to break down the proteins and the sugars and the fats in your food into small enough components. And so when they get into the gut, they just pass right through the gut lining. And so now there's too large of a molecule, and your body says, oh no, we gotta get it. And so you get an allergic reaction or some sort of intolerance reaction. That happens to foods like tomatoes more often, your nightshade foods, right? Eggplants, zucchinis, red peppers, tomatoes are kind of higher on the list. Somebody with ulcerative colitis might not be able to eat a tomato, not because tomatoes are bad, but out of the fact that we have kind of crappy growing practices now and
Especially
harvesting
here.
practices. That's another component which I don't really want to focus on this time, but there's that aspect, but then also the fact that you're not actually just digesting the food well enough and your gut is letting those large molecules through. So an anti-inflammatory diet will help to soothe all of that as well. So you might want to stay away from your nightshade foods just for a short while until you're done healing and doing some repair on the gut lining, because those foods might just create more inflammation.
Absolutely.
rather than help for the time being. Not saying that that is a forever thing, right? So red meat might be something that you want to stay away from. Just a harder to digest food. You need more stomach acid for something like that, and if your stomach acid levels are low, that's a harder thing for you to digest.
You're saying for someone with IBS specifically.
Correct. Or anyone really with digestive issues.
Okay.
So if you are taking, for example, an antacid, first of all, we need to circle back to that. If you're taking an antacid, then you probably have digestive issues, even though you're not IBS related exactly. And in that sense, I would say probably stay away from those foods until you get your acid reflux in check. Once that's in check, then go to those a little bit harder to digest whole, healthy foods.
Got it.
Oh, and stay away from grains. Grains are just overall, if you can't find good ones, ancient grains, just stay away from them. We don't
Before
want
I get to the next question, what do you mean by ancient grain? Like what kind of grains to stay away from?
So if you look on like flour or grain packages, oats are over processed just in the processing. They have tons of pesticides, tons of pesticides.
Even the organic ones, like the organic gluten-free oats? Like I buy a bag
Yeah,
from
so a
Costco,
lot
I
of
get like a
them,
big bag.
the main issue with organic is GMO, I would say. So they just generally contain more gluten because of our engineering process, which gluten is more inflammatory to the body. Just overall. Our bodies can handle a certain amount. So like if we had oats, let's say 500 years ago, maybe they had 4% gluten in them and we would eat them no problem. Now they have, let's say, 12% gluten in them, and now our bodies are reacting because we haven't adjusted evolutionarily. Our bodies haven't adapted for that. So now we're having more issue breaking down all of those gluten. We don't have the enzymes to do that. There's just too many. So, it's kind of like sifting, something's going to get caught, or something's going to be let through.
That's due to the processing of it?
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's all about the processing of how we harvest our foods, right? So
Yeah.
a tomato also, something interesting, will be, if it's organic, it's ripened on the vine and then picked, meaning it will have less inflammatory and less toxic components in the tomato. Whereas if you are getting just a conventional tomato, they pick it when it's still green and add ethylene to make it or yellow or red or whatever. The picked green one contains more toxic component to the body. You need it to vine ripen for it to be healthier for us. That's number one. Number two is all of the pesticides are creating a lot of inflammation. Number three, the ethylene is also no good for you. So
Yeah.
it's just like a lot of different components adding to one major problem,
Yeah.
which is inflammation in the body. It's just a lot of toxicity. Our bodies are, it's hard to filter it, especially when you're not giving it what it requires to help filter out, right?
Absolutely.
You're just loading her up.
And then you're going through like the issue now of when you are trying to feed your body the proper nutritious foods. Now, where are they being sourced? Because like you're saying with the chemicals and stuff like that, and I've been doing a lot of reading on like glyphosate, which that could be a whole other topic, I'm sure as well
Oh my
too. So
God, glyphosate is so
but
scary.
but that's what I'm saying is like you can go to the supermarket and you're purchasing, let's say, tomatoes or veggies or whatnot, and you're thinking that you're doing your body, you're helping
Mm-hmm.
your body, you're healing your body, but due to all of the chemicals and how glyphosate is sprayed on, I would say probably majority of our produce,
Everything.
um,
Yeah.
are you actually healing your body? Or are you actually helping it? So I
Yeah.
know that's a whole other
So
topic.
just
Yeah,
for
like
everyone else, glyphosate is Roundup.
okay.
It is the same thing. Glyphosate is Roundup. So if you
Sorry,
that's you
what
can
is Roundup?
it's interesting. It's Roundup is the spray, the glyphosate spray, the pesticide that they spray onto our crop.
And that causes inflammation as well too. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure it
So
causes a lot of other
some
things.
people have heard like the name Roundup. Some people heard glyphosate. It's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
generally. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, can you explain a little bit about, why trans fats, refined foods, and ultra processed foods, how they contribute to inflammation specifically?
So we can actually do like a lot of like its own webinar on this, like a
Really?
whole series on this. But because they do slightly different things that create damage. So trans fats, our cells need fats to have a healthy cell membrane. And then our cells, based on the membrane, will allow certain molecules in or take them out. So they're basically like regulating how much good versus bad is inside of the cell. Trans fats harden the cell membrane and they don't allow good things in and they don't allow bad things out. So that
Mm,
cell ends up compromised. And that's very, very general as to how that trans fat works. So your body needs to find those cells that have been damaged with the trans fats. And the more trans fats you have, the more damaged cells you have. But your body needs to find those cells, get rid of them. And if you have a dysfunction in your immune system, which is actually super related to the gut, that becomes an issue. People end up with a lot of, things like cancer and stuff like that from the trans fats. Alzheimer's can happen. Lots of different issues. Processed foods contain a lot of toxic chemical in them and a lot of processed sugar and like fructose syrups in them. So fructose is harder for us to pass through our system and get excrete from the body. So your body stores it in the liver, increasing um, non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome. So I would say, I think at this point, I was reading a statistic, it's like 60% of people have non-alcoholic fatty liver, when that used to be like a 20% for alcoholics.
Oh my
Generally,
gosh.
if you were an alcoholic at the time, yeah. And now kids, like at the age of 2, have like non-alcoholic fatty liver because of all of the processed sugar that they're eating. It's wild. So you really have to be careful with that. But the other way is it feeds the wrong bacteria in the gut. So your microbiome is part of your immune system. It protects your lining and tells your body what is good, what is not good. It allows the integrity of those of your lining. So if it's really open, anything can get through. And the more good ones you have to support, the better your immune system works.
Mm,
The fewer good ones you have, the harder your immune system has to work to push all the crap out. So when you're eating a processed food, it's doing multiple things to create inflammation, right? And that also triggers your stress response. It's a whole chain, like your body's doing a lot of work to mitigate for the fact that you ate a processed food.
that's insane.
And the biggest issue that I see, the biggest issue is that it's really messing with your gut microbiome, which is essentially like a layer of skin. You don't want your skin to be damaged because then you're prone to infection. Your gut microbiome is like your layer. Your gut lining is like that layer. There's a little bit of damage, you're prone to a lot of different things if your body's not working correctly.
Absolutely. And I was reading about you, especially with your gut microbiome, especially when you wreak havoc on it and whatnot, and you eat a lot of ultra processed foods that can obviously in turn now show up on the skin, whether it's psoriasis, eczema,
Mm-hmm.
acne. When I was in the skincare space, I dealt with a lot of clients that had acne. And for the most part, on their intake forms, I did have a question in regards to nutrition, trying to find out, like, kind of their lifestyle, also lifestyle. But
Mm-hmm.
really, what is it that they're eating on a day-to-day basis? So I really wanted to look at like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and for the most part, a lot of it was ultra processed foods. I'm not saying that ultra processed foods is the only, like, if you eat ultra processed foods that you're going to get acne or like whatnot. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, but I did see a huge correlation within the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And it's interesting. I was listening to a webinar. I'm forgetting the naturopath, the naturopathic doctor's name right now, but if I remember, we'll link it. But um, he was saying something so interesting. Your body pushes to the safest place possible. So it pushes out toxins to the safest place. It doesn't want it in your liver. It doesn't want it in your kidneys. It doesn't want it in your brain. So where does it put it? Your skin,
mm, wow.
right? Where does it go? It goes to your skin. Once your skin can't handle it, it goes to the next place, which could be for some people maybe gout to your toes, right? You don't necessarily need your toes. You want your heart, so you don't want your toxins in your heart, right? You don't want your toxins in your liver. Those are, life sustaining organs. But like really you could get by without your toes,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
I
I mean, yeah, or
like
your
my
hands.
toes. Yeah.
So for example, gout goes to your feet, or um, arthritis, usually in the knuckles first, right? So it's such an interesting perspective. Your first symptom is usually skin related. So kids with eczema or psoriasis or rosacea, right? Or maybe you get rashes as a kid and you're just not doing anything about it because you don't recognize that there's a gut health relation there. And then it gets worse. And then it gets worse. And then it gets worse. And your symptoms get worse. Maybe you get a migraine. Maybe you get, your body's trying to find balance. And that's how it does it.
So crazy how everything is connected. And I was also
Mm-hmm.
reading an article too, how like our gut microbiome, how there's like a direct correlation. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. there's a lot of studies now proving that it has some form of correlation to Alzheimer's and things like that too, which is very
I think
interesting.
that's becoming more and more accepted
Yeah.
that it's like an insulin resistance issue. But insulin
Yeah.
resistance is a common metabolic issue for a lot of different problems, because if you have a metabolic problem, it's usually related, first of all, to insulin and thyroid and, stress response, gut health, like everything works as one. So when you have one problem, you generally have a multitude of issues that are just not showing up right now.
Yeah.
One organ is overcompensating for another organ. So if your gut microbiome is not working correctly, your stomach acid is not working correctly, your liver is overcompensating a lot. Then your liver can't do it, so your kidneys overcompensate,
Mm.
right? So all your body's always trying to stay in balance, and your organs are always helping each other.
That's crazy.
That's actually one
That's
of the reasons why I don't super love going to specialists, unless there's like a very particular item that I want. A specialist, a doctor who specializes in cardiovascular, they're not necessarily looking at your gut, or an allergist is not necessarily paying attention to your gut or your stress levels,
yeah,
right? Or maybe your stomach acid levels. All of those things work together,
of course.
you know. Yeah.
So I know we
Yeah.
spoke about ultra processed foods, refined foods, trans fats, inflammatory foods. What about anti-inflammatory foods that we should actually include in our diet? Do you have any recommendations?
Mm, lots.
Like the top
Lots of
ones.
green, lots of green veggies. Green veggies are like the ultimate protectors. Omegas, you want to get high quality omegas, right? If you're getting flax, get the organic flax. Don't cheap out. Get the organic cold pressed. If you're getting fish, get the organic wild caught. We don't want
Mhm.
farmed, no farmed. Olive oils, you want to get the really good, healthy, extra virgin, organic olive oils. Um, Omegas are really going to help reduce inflammation. They have a lot of protective properties. They also help create hormones. Omegas are like, you need omegas. You need
The
them.
ones
And you
you
need a
got
lot
me,
more than what the RDA looks like.
really.
Oh, those ones. Yeah, I
You
really
got me
like
the
those.
wild ones. It was like a, right?
Mm-hmm. There are lots of different brands that have good ones, but I find that one, the New Roots Wild, I I personally really like that one. Also, if you can find a liquid version, those are really good for wild omegas. Um, the RDAs, I feel, are too low. Our bodies are doing too much. We need to overcompensate also for that. Um, there are just too many toxins in our environment, too many toxins in our food, and our bodies need the additional support. So the RDAs, I feel personally, are just too low for
Yeah.
almost everything, including like a prenatal. So, I mean, some people need more, some people need less. That's what the RDA is more all encompassing. Vitamin A's, you don't want to have like too many fat soluble, like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E. You don't want those ones to take too many of them. But yeah, very important to do the omegas at a higher dose.
Yeah.
You want an extra strength. You're using your omegas that are really important. Polyphenols, sulforaphanes, um, basically all vitamins can be found in green foods, green vegetables. Green vegetables are literally a powerhouse food. You want to
Hmm.
eat as many of them as possible. The nice thing also about the green veggies is they're low cal. So you
Yeah.
can literally eat as many as you want. And like you don't have to calorie count. You're not sitting here on a weight loss diet and counting your calories for veggies. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. Eat as many as you want, even if you're eating all day. I don't care. Eat them,
Hmm.
you know. And then just like gut healthy foods. So a lot of probiotic foods, sauerkraut, kefir, if you can handle kefir, kimchi's, stuff like that. Kombucha is a great question that I get. I don't recommend kombucha because it's
Okay.
fed on sugar. We want to reduce sugar. We don't want to feed sugar. So I don't love kombucha as an option for probiotics. But all the other ones are really great alternatives. And like sauerkraut's super easy to make. Like literally so easy to make. All you need is a cabbage and some salt. Like you literally don't need anything else. It's so cheap, it's so healthy, and
Yeah.
then you just gotta wait for it for like a week. Like so easy to do. The other part of this is when you're adding probiotics, you also want to feed the good ones. So it's not just a matter of taking probiotics, it's also you have to eat what feeds them. If you have them, but you're feeding the wrong ones, the good ones will die.
Mm.
We don't want them to die. We want to feed them. So, how do we feed them? Garlics, onions, um, walnuts are a really great prebiotic. Jerusalem artichoke, turmeric. Turmeric's also really great anti-inflammatory. Ginger, you want to eat your green foods and maybe add some colored vegetables in there as well. Though that will feed the good bacteria. Stay away from sugar, stay away from processed foods, natural flavors, all of that, because that will feed the bad bacteria. We don't want that.
I love that. I 100% agree. I'm just curious to know for someone that, I mean, for myself, I'll just use myself as an example. Um, I mean, as you know, I do focus quite a bit on like an anti-inflammatory diet. And when I say that, like, I mean just gut healing foods. Um, I do eat meat, so I am not a vegetarian. I do incorporate a lot of veggies and whatnot. As you know, I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
organic foods and things like that. And I try to buy local, especially since I live in like farm county. Um,
Yeah,
but for someone like that wants to improve their gut, but again, they're not looking to become vegetarians or whatnot and just eat veggies. Like, what about meat? Because for myself, I've actually improved my gut like by tenfold. Like it's crazy by switching to grass-fed organic. It's literally insane. And even my diet now, like for instance,
I love that you're
breakfast,
saying this.
I incorporate protein. Like protein has completely changed everything. I know, from our discussion, even months ago when I brought it up to you, I personally deal with like just chronic bloating. I mean, I wake up bloated, I go to bed bloated. I work out 4 to 5 times a week. I eat good. So I'm like, what is going on? But again, I have noticed a huge shift from simply just changing the type of meat that I'm eating. So I switched even from like the
Yeah.
chicken that I'm having, the organic chicken, and grass-fed beef, bison, lamb. It's completely
Hmm.
changed everything. So sorry, I really extended that, but for someone
I
that wants to
love
improve
this.
their gut, but they want to eat meat too, like they're not looking to become a vegetarian, because for me, for instance, I love my meat and I don't think I don't want to be a vegetarian. I love it. So like,
Hmm.
what do you
So I
suggest?
actually think meat is a really important part of the diet
Okay.
or lifestyle.
Yeah.
I don't recommend people going on a full vegan diet.
Okay.
Vegetarian is one thing, that's okay. But I don't recommend vegan unless you know what you're doing. That's a
Mm,
different story. Full vegan can be done well if you know what you were doing.
okay.
Um, but for the majority of people, you need to eat the meat. You're not gonna have enough iron. You're not gonna have enough B12. You need the meat, and um, you just have to purchase better quality meat. And so the same problem that we have with our vegetables, where there's so many pesticides and pesticide residues on our grain or crop or you know on our foods, we have a very similar problem in our meat industry. So a lot of farmers have so much herd that they need the antibiotics. One gets sick, they all get sick.
Yeah.
They need to pump them with antibiotics. Antibiotics come through in the meat. and affect our gut microbiome. It's like we're taking the antibiotic in low dose. That messes up our good gut bacteria. They're pumped with hormones that goes through the meat. You don't want any of those hormones. You don't want any of the antibiotics. You don't want even what they're being fed. What they're being fed matters, right? That's why grass fed is so important, right? And I wouldn't say that it's more expensive. I would say maybe like a buck or two, maybe per pound. Like it's not a crazy difference, and you don't need to eat meat every single day if you don't want to.
Yeah.
You can eat it 4 times a week as long as you're eating it. But I mean, I definitely prefer protein in the morning. I find it fills me up. Um, but you want to have those foods, those really good quality sourced meats as well from really holistic farmers who understand what quality meat looks like, smells like, tastes like. You're also going to get so many more benefits, nutritional benefits from those meats. They have
Mm.
healthier fats, right? So if they're eating trans fats, you're eating trans fats by eating that meat.
Mm.
They're eating hormones, you're eating hormones. If they're eating antibiotics, you're eating antibiotics,
Yeah.
right? Whatever goes through them comes into you, right? Another big problem is they, and I don't think they have to label this, I could be wrong, but when they are packaging the food, they inject this like nitrate solution into the meat to make it look nice and big and juicy.
Oh,
And
plump.
so a
I've
lot
seen
of
that.
people, the plumping of the meat, yeah. So a lot of the time when you get organic, you're like, why am I getting so little? It's because they've injected the non-organic meat
Oh my
with
gosh.
some sort of solution, and we don't know what's in the solution. Sometimes on the package it says spices, but you don't know what those spices are. Nobody's labeled it. And sometimes they don't even tell you. So that's a big problem. Another new problem that we're having with meat is, which can create a lot of problems because we just don't have enough research on it, is they don't, there's been a law passed that you don't have to label lab grown meat. So you can purchase chicken that
Okay.
looks like chicken, that you think is chicken, but it's not chicken. It's lab grown chicken or lab grown beef.
And they don't have to write that it's lab grown chicken.
Right. And so they take essentially, from what my understanding, they take cells and they essentially just grow that part in a lab, and they control the environment in the lab setting to be able to get your ground beef, for example. And not super loving that idea. I think there's also somebody working on 3D printing meat as well. That's something else that we have to look out for. I think that you do have to label right as of right now, but the lab grown is not labeled. But I feel like you can tell the texture
Oh yeah.
when you buy it. But yeah, lots and
I
lots of problems. You want to get a farmer, a local farmer that you trust, that you trust.
absolutely.
So important.
And
Mm-hmm.
even from, you know, I know that that's a big thing too for a lot of people, especially like grass-fed meat when people talk about like the pricing and whatnot. Let's be honest right now. Like regular meat that you find at like Longo's or like Metro or whatever, it's expensive. Like, I mean, I think I spent for like chicken,
No,
like it's actually ridiculous. I think for like
I
four
know.
chicken breasts, like if you're going to like Metro or like just a regular grocery store, I think it was like $25 where I can get a pack of like four
I
chicken breasts
know.
from like my local farm, and I think I'm paying like what, 15, $16? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and personally,
Yeah.
I buy it in bulk and then I put them in like freezer packs and then I just freeze them and they're like individually packaged. So I can kind of just take them out as I go. But even
Mm-hmm.
the color difference
Oh
in
my
grass-fed
God,
meats
I
and even like
know.
the organic chicken, like you'll actually notice with the organic
Mm-hmm.
chicken, it literally has like a yellow tint. Like the skin is like yellowish, whereas the one at like the grocery store, it's like white. And then
I
the
know.
grass and like the beef, like the ground beef or the bison, it's literally like
Yeah.
a deep red purple color. And then you go to like the supermarket to buy ground beef and it's like, I don't even know.
Yeah. It's like a
It's
grayish
it's like, and there's patches. Do you notice that
brown.
when you're looking at
Hmm.
ground beef, sometimes it has
Yeah.
like gray patches, and I'm just like, oh, what is that?
Yeah.
But to my point, it's not.
And it's like
I think it
so just
depends
so
where
much more
you're looking.
satisfying.
It depends. You
Hmm.
have to really source like the meat properly because I really do believe that if you find a local
I'm in
farm,
agreement.
you can get it
Hmm.
significantly cheaper than even at your grocery store. I know there are certain farms or whatnot where they'll actually sell you like half a cow or like whatever, you can buy it. You just
Yeah.
need to buy a large
Yeah.
enough freezer where you can kind of like store all your
Yeah.
meat. So for cost
Yeah.
wise, I mean, yes, if you're going to be going to the grocery store, like a traditional grocery store, and you're going to be buying grass fed, yes, it's going to be expensive 1000%. I know even when you're comparing like apples to
Yeah.
apples, when like at Metro, like a pound of ground beef, regular one could be like $8 a pound, where the grass fed one could be 12. So yeah, there's a difference. But from local
Hmm.
farms and stuff like that, like yeah, like just sourcing your food properly, you can save
Maybe a
so
dollar
much
more.
money. Yeah, like,
Maybe a dollar more.
but it's
And the
not.
quality and the quality, oh my God. And you know what's interesting to your point is the taste profile
It's different.
is exquisite.
Yeah.
You can like really taste the difference. You don't have to use as many spices because the meat itself tastes so good. You know, people have this aversion to meat, but it's probably just because that meat is so bland and it has all of these chemicals in it. Your body doesn't want it. It's telling you it doesn't want it. But if you eat organic meat, you're going to probably crave it. You're going to want to
1000%.
eat it
I
because it
crave,
tastes so good.
I crave, it sounds so funny. And even Dave, when he comes downstairs and he sees like what
Yeah.
I'm eating for breakfast, he probably thinks I'm crazy. I eat bison burgers every single morning for breakfast. And it's literally just like regular bison burgers. And I just season it with like Celtic
Yeah.
salt on top on like both sides. And like that's it.
Mm,
So I eat that with like kimchi, sometimes like sauerkraut and things like that. I feel so much better.
I
Um,
know.
it's actually crazy how just switching your diet and switching out certain foods,
I
um,
know.
what it can do for your gut. Again, I'm still dealing with the bloating, which again, I know we're still in the process of figuring that all
Yeah.
out because again, there's I think a lot of my bloating issues come from like lifestyle and things like that. Not so much just
Yeah.
diet related. Um, but yeah, just how
Yeah.
it's so crazy how it's all connected. But
Yeah.
I wanted to go over cooking methods. Because I know like
Oh,
especially now,
this
like
is a
it's the
good one.
summertime, so a lot of people are like barbecuing their foods or if they're up at the cottage or like things like that. And then you have like steaming and sautéing and baking. Like how do this different cooking methods actually affect inflammatory properties in food?
Okay, that's a great question. Great question. So I'll use frying as the best example. I feel like it's the easiest to use. Um, so frying something versus, let's say, steaming, right? So
Mhm.
if you're frying a vegetable or your meat, generally you're going to need a lot of oil. The oil quality is probably not going to be a good oil. And if you are using a good oil, very likely that oil is not meant to be fried at high temperatures. So it will create toxic chemicals and toxic components in either situation. Either you're using just a shitty oil,
Yeah.
and that oil is already very bad. It's going to leach into your food. Your food is going to create that toxicity, create increasing inflammation. The oil itself is going to increase inflammation. It's a bad quality oil. Maybe it contains trans fats, you know, stuff like that. Maybe it's ultra processed oil. Then let's say you're using a really healthy oil, like extra virgin olive oil. That oil is not meant to be consumed at high heats that
Mhm.
you would use for deep frying. So how you're cooking your food is really going to determine on the quality of nutrients in that food. Generally, the best is to eat a vegetable raw, so like in a salad or something like that. Some people just can't digest that because they have really damaged digestive systems and they have really damaged gut microbiomes. And so cooking a vegetable might help ease the digestive system and the digestive process for
Mm,
that food. So maybe you want to steam a vegetable. That's going to be a much healthier way um, than deep frying, for example. Right. So cooking really is going to determine how healthy that food is. You know, I know there's this whole thing with air fryers now. I mean, I do love using my air fryer, but I'm seeing a lot of issues with how air fryers are built can create toxicity in our food.
yeah. I was reading, they say for like
So,
the best type of air fryers are like the stainless steel ones,
but it's
right?
actually in the cord that's the issue from what I'm reading is all of the toxic chemical is inside of the cord that you plug in or
My
the cord
gosh.
that goes into. So you do want the stainless steel, you don't want the Teflon, absolutely, but there could be. I mean, air fryers are a new thing. We don't have a lot of research on it, so do we? Do we not? I don't know.
Yeah.
To be
Well,
determined.
and now with
To
the
be determined.
Teflon, because the like traditional air fryers, most of them are like Teflon made, is the reason why you don't want to use like the Teflon air fryers because like it'll, I guess like the chemicals from Teflon is actually going to leach into the food. Is that what it
Into
is?
the
At
food,
high
yeah.
temperatures, I'm assuming.
So you don't want to use Teflon. You want to
Okay.
go for like your cast iron, maybe ceramic. Glass is great if you can find glass. I mean, kind of hard to find a glass pan that works well. In that case, maybe you want to use a cast iron, but
Yeah.
like to steam something, or to boil vegetables, glass might be a really great option. Also, glass to put into the oven rather than like a Teflon pan,
Okay.
so things like that. Those are really going to make a difference in terms of how the food is prepared and whether it's going to create some inflammation.
Mm,
There also might be just something if you're using often, maybe you use, for example, turmeric often. Turmeric is a super high anti-inflammatory, but you need ginger or black pepper to activate it. So a lot of people don't know that. You need to eat those together for it to work well in the
interesting.
body. Um, Garlic, you actually want to just leave it for like 10-15 minutes after you cut it to get the most benefit out of it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I eat
Yeah,
raw
just leave it.
garlic. I'll eat like a raw
I
clove.
love
So do I.
I
I know
love
it's
raw garlic. Right?
it doesn't
Yeah.
recognize me, but it
See, even
recognizes your thumb.
even even Zoom is knowing that that
Like
shit's good.
yay for garlic. Yeah.
Right? So you want to like there are things that you can do to increase anti-inflammatory properties as well,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just removing is definitely step one, I would say. Remove all of the stuff that could create inflammation in the body. But then you can also add anti-inflammatory, right? They
Mm,
are going to benefit you in those ways. But step one, remove
okay.
all of it. Step one. That's the easiest step, I would say, because then you just swap out for something that's healthier, you know. Get rid of your Teflon pans. Swap it for cast iron.
Okay.
Swap it for ceramic. And then that's just going to make things just easier. And then I would suggest, like, if you want chips, which are ultra processed, maybe identify with your body, what is it that I actually want in the chips? Is it the saltiness? Because then maybe have some olives. Is it the crunch? Maybe have a carrot or celery instead, right? And then if it's chocolate, is it the sweetness? Chocolate's not bad if you're buying good quality chocolate, right? You want the 75% and up cacao,
Mm,
organic, everything organic,
okay.
as organic as possible. I know that can get expensive, so maybe it's the sweetness that you want. Maybe go for blueberries, strawberries, a banana, you
Yeah.
know. And then you'll have, I mean, you can have a million blueberries. I would rather you eat a million blueberries than have a bowl of cereal,
Mm.
like ultra processed cereal. We don't
Oh
want
yeah.
it. We don't
I've
want it,
been I've been doing so much
you know.
research on cereal and stuff like that, and like even like the ingredients, you can
Ugh,
just, oh, it's
ugh,
horrible. Yeah. It's really, really
mm,
bad. That actually goes to like
yeah,
you're already answering the question, but it's basically, for everyone listening, like what are some practical tips for someone looking to start an inflammatory diet? So I know you said like obviously replacing like your pans and stuff like that. You can start with that, like just getting rid of like anything Teflon and using whether it's
easy.
cast iron, stainless steel, ceramic, things like that. But as for like
Mhm.
foods specifically, like how can someone slowly start to incorporate? Like, what do they do? Like something
Educate
super
yourself
easy. Okay.
on what different ways sugar shows up.
Okay.
If the package says, first, number one, if the package says hydrogenated anywhere, put it down. Stay away from hydrogenated. That's definitely number one. If it says trans fat, anything more than zero, put it down. Now we've dealt with the trans fats. Avoiding the trans fats is very important.
Okay.
Number two, I would say educate yourself on the different ways that sugar can show up. So if it looks like natural flavors, maltodextrin, syrups, cane syrup, fructose syrup, glucose syrup, whatever the different types of syrups there are. Um, and I think they have ones that are like trickier, agave syrup, whatever, right? So they have like a ton of different ways that they can say refined sugar. I would educate myself on a few of those, maybe, 5 to 10, something that's comfortable for you. And then anytime a package says that item in the first 6 ingredients, put it down. That would be my best way. And so you'll actually start noticing things like this was a huge eye opener for me when I went to the grocery store the first time doing this. Yogurt,
Oh,
plain Greek organic yogurt, beautiful. No problem with the sugar. There is nothing in there except for yogurt and bacterial cultures. No problem. A honey yogurt. Literally, the second ingredient is sugar.
yeah.
Literally.
The flavored ones, like the
So
peach or strawberry flavored stuff. Yeah.
all of the flavored ones are garbage.
Okay.
They all contain sugar in them. And the worst part is you have the bacterial culture in it. The probiotic is in there, and you have sugar feeding the bad ones, which is what we don't want,
Yeah.
right? So I remember the first time I went to the grocery store and I was doing this, I was like, oh my God, I probably spent 3 hours at the store and left with like 5 items in my cart.
And knowing you,
And
they're probably just like apples or bananas or something.
oh my God, I was in shock. I was in shock,
Wow.
shock. I would go down the aisles and say, okay, maybe I can eat some cereal. I'd pick up a package, even the organic ones. Like, oh my God, there's so much garbage in them. And even if it says organic cane sugar, it's still cane sugar. You
Cane
still don't want
sugars.
it.
Okay. That's a whole other, I feel like we're gonna like, there's so
Yeah.
many things that we spoke about today that we're gonna have to like dive deeper on, like the different
Oh,
types of sugars and
definitely.
stuff like that. I also wanted to talk about, obviously not on this call, but another one about the different types of oils um that you should be
Oh,
using, like depending on
we
what you're
could have like
cooking.
7. Yeah.
And how, yeah, and how like traditional, like a lot of
Yeah.
restaurants and whatnot, like they're not using high quality oils, for instance, like avocado
Mm-hmm.
oil or olive oil. That's why
Mm-hmm.
usually when you go out to restaurants, you feel like crap. Like when you get home, you're
Yeah.
bloated or whatnot, rather than if you're
Yeah.
cooking. I mean,
Oh,
obviously,
actually, on that
yeah,
point, another tip for an anti-inflammatory lifestyle,
yeah.
make your home anti-inflammatory as
Mm.
possible, right? Make your refrigerator, groceries as anti-inflammatory as possible. Your spices, your whatever it is that you're consuming in your house, anti-inflammatory. it is so hard to go to a restaurant and use this lifestyle. So don't think about it. If you're going out to eat, just eat because that's nourishing your soul and that's an important part as well, right? You're not going to do this perfectly. It's impossible to do this perfectly. You will trip up. You will. And the best thing to do, just be kind to yourself, be compassionate to yourself, and make certain situations just non-negotiables, and other situations when the time comes, that's when I'll make the decision. You know, you can't. It's so hard to find a restaurant that's going to do an anti-inflammatory diet perfectly. Even your healthy vegan restaurants, they're using all these milks that are not necessarily good for you. You know,
Absolutely.
it's so hard. It's so hard to do this outside of the home. So just don't think about it outside of the home.
For your
That's my
insanity.
best advice.
Yeah.
You know, your mental health is so much more important than creating this bubble of crazy, I need to eat anti-inflammatory foods
Yeah.
constantly, you know. Do it as best as you can, you know, and then just make small changes. Small changes are going to get you the farthest.
Absolutely. And plus, it won't be as overwhelming too, because I feel like for a lot of people, if,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whether they're working with a practitioner or even just what they're reading online or whatnot, if it can be super overwhelming if they're like, okay, now I need to switch everything
Mm-hmm.
to organic. I can only eat grass fed. I have to throw out all my spices. I can't cook, with my air fryer anymore. I have to, it's extremely, and
Yeah.
I'm just speaking like from
Yeah.
myself, my own experience too. I know, I mean, you and I talk all the time too. Like I'm overwhelmed too. I'm, like I'll go through my pantry and I'm like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
should I be eating this or whatnot too? So I think you're right to the point of just
Yeah.
like taking baby steps, and just educating yourself too. And obviously,
Yeah.
learning and finding trusted professionals as well. Like, where are you getting your
Mm-hmm.
information from as well too? I feel like there's a lot of
Yeah.
misinformation online.
Yeah.
So again, I think just
Absolutely.
finding trusted professionals that specialize in whatever it is that you're
Mm-hmm.
going through, whether it's bloating, IBS, colitis, skin health issues, whatever it is, and really just
Yeah.
be cautious of what it is that you're consuming. Because again,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're consuming, it's obviously not just affecting your gut health, it's affecting your mind, your mental health too, which it's
Yeah.
all
Oh,
correlated.
anybody looking for a professional, just
Yes.
so you know, my the way that I like to do things, I want you to come to me and then not need me. I want you to
Mm,
eventually not be my client. You, if I successfully make you a non-client, I have done my job,
I love that.
right? I don't want you to be my client forever. And so there are a lot of people out there trying to like strategize to get the most out of a client lifespan. How much money can I make off of you? You know, doctors do that. They're not trying to heal you for the most part. There are some really great ones out there, you know, but if you feel like this person is genuinely not trying to have your best interest, maybe don't work with them,
Yeah.
right? That's something that I feel is so important. I do not want you to be my client. I want you to become so self sufficient that you no longer need me,
I love
that
that.
you never come back to me again,
I'll always need you
right?
though.
I mean, with the evolving, environment and like
Yeah,
the way things go, generally maybe you want to keep that person in your life. Absolutely.
I get it.
But I want you to be so self-sustained that you know how to research, that you know how to feel your body and your intuition so deeply that you no longer need to come ask me that question.
Yeah.
You no longer need to say, I don't know what to do. I need someone's help. I want you to become so self confident, so self reliant that you are able to manage everything that comes your way, right? Whether it's stress perception, whether it's this new thing is creating a new symptom in my life. You know, if a doctor wants you to be a patient forever, they're not here to help you. That is the most important thing that I can say. Therapy included. Any health professional that is not genuinely helping you get to a place where you no longer need them is not here to help you. I don't want you to need me. I want you to be able to do it yourself.
I love that. What I'm actually going to do is when I actually share this video with the community, I'm going to drop your booking link. That way, if anybody does want to book a call with Simona, from my understanding, Simona, you do offer free consultations, free consults.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, first session we figure out what it is that's going on, and if I can help, give me a little bit of background, and we go from there.
I love
Hmm.
that. That's amazing.
Yeah, first one's free.
That's perfect. So I'm going to drop the link to for Simona's sorry, her booking link. So that way, if you do want to book a free consultation with her, you guys can do that. And yeah, again, Simona, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Again, I know we spoke about so many different things, and I think that what we can actually start doing too is I know you and I are going to be on like so many different calls. We've got a lot of things planned, but we can start
Yeah.
like dissecting, depending on like what people are asking for. We can really dive deeper into particular things. I know our next topic that we're going to be discussing is cortisol, so we can definitely do that. I just know with gut health, there's so many different things that you can talk about. So for anybody watching this, if
Mhm.
there is a particular topic, if you're going through something that's related to health and wellness, anything that's related to like gut health, let us
Mhm.
know. Because then of course, Simona herself can whether put together resources, or it kind of gives us a good understanding of like what kind of video trainings that we can provide for everybody. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love you. Thank you, Simona.
Thanks for having me.